Hey you that clicked on the video. Before we start the video, we need to talk. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Sit down for a minute because there's something I would like to discuss. It's come to my attention that on here and mostly on Facebook, I get a lot of comments like this. Wah wah, you didn't absolutely love the motorcycle I bought and own. Wah wah. Which is probably a fair and valid point, so I feel like I should address it. So the whole reason why in my reviews I maybe didn't say all nice things about your motorcycle is, bear with me here, motorcycle manufacturers have no control of the afterlife. Now I know a lot of you fanboys are probably confused right now and you're scratching your head, and a lot of you guys believe that if you don't defend until death whatever motorcycle you bought, that you'll be sent to a pit of molten rock and fire when you die. But trust me on this one, I read up on it. The idea of an afterlife actually predates the manufacturing of modern motorcycles. It's crazy. So you don't actually have to get offended when I don't like every single thing about your motorcycle. That being said, the only thing left to do is hit that like button, subscribe, and enjoy this video from Motorcycles Off-Road. What's up guys, my name is Andrew and welcome to Motorcycles Off-Road. I hope that little intro made you laugh a little bit, and sometimes with these videos I just like to do something different. So in this video it's going to be a review / more side-by-side comparison of the Tenere 700 and the 300 Rally. I'm going to break this video down into different subsections. I'll give you a list here, and if you guys stay to the end I'll talk about some mods that I would do if you were to get these bikes, or maybe to help you if you already have one compared to the other. Some things that you just make comfort better on the road and off-road with these motorcycles. But I wanted to thank you for clicking on the video, and I just wanted to take a second to tell you the two best ways that you could support this channel. Number one, you could pick up one of my 300 Rally t-shirts on my website, motorcyclesoffroad.com. These t-shirts are made by me and they will be shipped directly by me. I only have 6 more to sell before I have funding to move on to the next design. So if you'd like to, help a fellow rider out and go purchase a t-shirt. And next is the big one, is the Patreon. I started the Patreon a few months ago. We have multiple different tiers, extra content on modifications, how-tos, drone shots, 300L, 300 Rally content, stuff constantly coming out that I don't put on the channel that I put on the Patreon. So if you get a chance, at very least watch the intro video, and I value your time, so let's just get right into the video. Okay, on to the comparison. So I have a full Tenere 700 review. I have also done a full Honda 300L review. And just a week or so back, I did the full Rally review. But now, let's compare the Tenere and the 300 Rally side by side. Now these bikes have a ton of similarities, so let's go over them for a minute. First thing you'll notice is the wheel size. The Tenere 700, unlike a lot of older adventure bikes, it sports 21 18-inch wheel package, just like most dual sports, and just like the Rally. Both of these motorcycles have spoked rims, which is a great thing for off-road. Spoke rims tend to be a little bit more durable when you hit rocks, logs, stuff like that, because they flex and they don't just crack like something like casted. Fuel injection. Both bikes have fuel injection, which is amazing. Because of this, both motorcycles have a linear power range, and a computer can compensate to a point for elevation changes, which is something I love. I love fuel injection on my motorcycles. I used to be a carburetor guy, but having these bikes really changed my mind. Now ABS. Both have it. Both super easy to turn off with one button, not a problem at all. The Tenere has its standard, and for the Rally it's a $300 option. Both have 6-speed transmissions, which I feel on a modern bike that you also want to take on the road, it's pretty much a must. Both have similar seat height, though the Honda is a tiny bit taller, but the Tenere feels marginally taller, and we'll talk about that later in the video when we start to talk about other things like off-road and capability of these motorcycles. Alright, so let's look at some specifications. The Honda has a 286cc single, whereas the Tenere has a parallel twin 689cc. Very smooth, very powerful engine on the Tenere. The max power is claimed 27 horsepower on the Honda, and the Tenere 73 horsepower. From my experience, the 300 engine has a little less horsepower than what Honda is actually claiming. Max torque is 19 foot-pounds on the Honda and 50 on the Tenere. The transmissions are a 6-speed transmission on both bikes, which is good to see on a modern motorcycle. Ground clearance is slightly taller at 10.8 inches on the Honda and 9.4 on the Tenere. The seat heights are basically the same. The Honda is a tiny bit taller, but it's insignificant. The wet weight of the Honda is 330 pounds or 150 kilograms, where the Tenere is 452 pounds, 205 kilograms. The estimated fuel economy for the Honda is 74 miles per gallon, whereas the Tenere is 54. The fuel capacity of both these bikes, the Honda is 3.4 gallons or 12.87 liters, and the Tenere is 4.2 gallons at 16 liters. And actually, though the Honda has the smaller tank, fact, because it's so good at utilizing its fuel, being a smaller engine, it actually has more range on a full tank of gas. MSRP for the Honda Rally is $5,999, and that is if you don't go for the ABS option, which is an additional $300. The Tenere is $10,299, which is $300 up from when I bought my Tenere in 2021. So now you see the similarities. There's also more so a ton of differences, and you really have to ask yourself, what are you going to use this motorcycle for? Is it on-road? Is it off-road? Well, these are the subjects I'm going to cover in the next two sections. Off-road. Okay, so I wanted to get off-road out of the way before on-road because I feel like it's the most important advice that I can give in this video. And at the very least, I can give you something useful for all the people that don't actually watch the video to the end, which my analytics say is a pretty high probability. But if you do, you are awesome, and I appreciate it, because the longer the video runs, the more it's likely that YouTube will show it to other people. So firstly, if you're new to motorcycling, or motorcycling off-road really, you should not get the Tenere 700 over the Rally. The Tenere is a monster for new riders off-road. She's a beast. She's powerful, she's heavy, and it takes a lot of skill to ride this bike off-road with proficiency. Yeah, you can get caught up watching some other videos of guys like Paul Torres flick it around like a 250cc dirt bike, but hardly no one on the planet has that skill set, and it's going to take you many years to develop that ability. And all those guys started on smaller bikes. Now the Rally, on the other hand, is one of the most approachable ADV bikes that you will find. It's easy to ride, it's easy to pick up when you drop it, and it's much easier to maneuver. I mean, this bike is a dual sport in ATV trim. It is a platform that you can really learn on and practice and build all your skills. Now let's say you're a little more advanced and you feel you're ready for something like the Tenere off-road. The advantages over the Rally are the power feels great and the suspension is really nice in my opinion. Also, you can't beat this sound. Now for really aggressive off-road, which you probably will not be doing with either of these bikes, but it should be noted, the Tenere has much better suspension. I love how it's adjustable, and I love the knob under the seat that you can really dial the bike in when you go with gear to without gear and back and forth. A toolless system always seems great for out on the trail when you want to make some minor adjustments. So the Tenere 700 power feels amazing unless you do not have the proper throttle discipline, and you could loop this bike right off the cliff or into a tree. But being totally realistic, the power is nice, but the high power is not really usable, mostly for off-road. It comes to the point off-road where you just don't need it. I mean, no one is bombing through single trails and whoops at 70 miles an hour, even gravel roads for that matter. This power has an advantage elsewhere, which is mainly on the road, which we'll cover in the road section, but not so much as we're talking off-road here. Both bikes are really powerful enough to climb anything, any hill, or anything you pointed at. So earlier I mentioned seat height, and this really plays a big part in the Tenere not being a beginner bike. The T7 has a wide tank and the weight sits high, so even though these numbers are similar on paper, the Tenere feels much taller. A wider seat and tank pushes your legs out further and just makes it harder to reach the ground. So if you are one of those riders that likes to drop a leg, I think it's unsafe to do so on the much heavier Tenere. And we also have to be honest about weight. The Tenere is going to be more close to 500 pounds over its stock 452 pounds. The reason is because most likely you're going to want to put on crash bars, bags, maybe pannier racks and bags on top of them, so that weight will add up real quick, especially when you add gear. One big claim to fame of the T7 is the high countershaft. This bike is designed that when you apply power, you actually push the rear tire into the ground, giving you better traction. It's a pretty cool feature, and I feel like it should be noted. All that being said, both of these bikes are capable, and usually the limitation will be the rider, not so much the bike when it comes to off-road. And when you're talking about ADV bikes riding down gravel roads and fire cuts, really both bikes are more than enough to get the job done. It's just if you want to adventure in some single track or some heavy mud pits or some mountainous rocks, baby heads, this type of riding is much better suited for the Rally. I took my 300L through everything, every single type of terrain you could think of, and after getting the Rally, it feels exactly like the 300L, just with a little more fuel capacity and wind protection. So if I was doing strictly off-road and I had to pick one of the two, it would be the Rally. And because even for me, somebody who's been riding for 20 years, the Tenere can seem pretty scary off-road. On-road experience. Just like off-road, both of these motorcycles are completely capable on-road, both of which can get up to highway speed, and both of which can maintain highway speed. But the big advantage here comes to the Tenere. There's a few reasons why this is true. Number one is the obvious, more power. It's easy for you to overtake any car on the highway. A lot of people ask the question, can these bikes go on the highway? And yes, they can. I just would avoid it with the 300 for the sheer fact that when overcoming other vehicles, it's not the best for it. The Tenere is able to zip by anyone. Next, the thing to consider is you have a single cylinder engine versus a twin that is completely balanced. Although the Honda has counterbalancing and is relatively pretty smooth, riding it up in the high RPMs for extended period of times will start to bother you. The droning noise, the vibration, etc. The Tenere, having a twin, feels completely smooth, no vibration at all. And of course, since it has so much more power, to achieve the same highway speeds that you would achieve on the 300, it's running in such a lower RPM, so the noise isn't quite as bad. Next, you can see how the Tenere is more designed for the road, the low fender, the stop wind from grabbing you and pulling around your nose, all the way down to little rubber inserts in the foot pegs. Now the advantages of the Honda, well, for back roads, in towns, in cities, I think the Honda is the best. If you commute in a city, the Honda is just easier to maneuver, easier to park when you need to get into tight spaces. You're less likely to drop the Honda, of course, and in tight city streets, all the Tenere's power will not really be used. As a commuter, you can make the argument that the Honda might be better because it's so much more fuel efficient. It'll cost you very little money to run this motorcycle on your insurance and at the gas pump. Couple that with the large fuel capacity, and you can travel over 250 miles between gas stops, which is actually pretty good. For most people, if they use this specifically just for a commuter, that would probably be once a week, or maybe even a little less frequency, in my case, for example. I make this argument all the time. Either way you look at it, a motorcycle is a great option for a commuter to go to work, as long as you're not dealing with a bunch of traffic and annoying dangerous situations, because every time you take the motorcycle out of your garage, you are saving money. With fuel costs the way they are today, cars just cannot compete with the fuel efficiency of a modern motorcycle, either one of these. And on top of it, the feeling of freeness, refreshment that you get from riding a motorcycle is bar none. But if I had to give an edge... Shush. Lay down. Come on, dog. Lay down. Lay down. Good girl. Jeez, dog just goes wild randomly. There's just somebody driving by. Lay down. Lay down. Good girl. Anyway... So, if I was to give an edge to one motorcycle over the other when it comes to road, it would have to be the Tenere. The Tenere is more suited for it, although it does depend on your specific situation, and in that case, some people might be better with the Honda. So if you're looking for a comfortable road bike, and you plan on doing hardly to no off-road, hopefully this section gave you more insight. Alright, aesthetics. I want to talk about aesthetics pretty briefly. Now the Honda comes in one color, which is red, and it looks solid. I like the black rims. Overall, the red is pretty attractive and it screams Honda. Now the Tenere comes in 3 different color schemes, and in fact mine's a little bit older of the color scheme, but it's blue, red, and black. I like the black second best, the red the least, and the blue is my favorite because it to me just screams Yamaha, and I love the blue rims that come with it. It's the only one that comes with the blue Yamaha rims. So I think that's great, and even if I put a different sticker kit on it, it's going to still follow the blue theme because I grew up with Hondas and Yamahas and, you know, the big 4, of course, Japanese motorcycles, so I just like that it pronounces, hey, I'm a Yamaha. Both bikes look amazing. Both bikes are eye catchers. People will comment on these bikes all the time about how awesome they are. I have mixed feelings. I think I like the Tenere's front end, the headlight structure. That's amazing. I like that so much more than the Honda. But then looking from the side, I think the Honda is a little more attractive because I really like the high fender. Now I do know there's high fender kits for the Tenere, but that kind of defeats the purpose. I never had anything really jam up in there. I did the factory like raise the fender as high as you could. If this was a judgment on sound, of course I would go with the Tenere, but since we're talking about looks, I think the Honda is a little better barring the front headlight. If you went and got one of those rally towers, like say you bought the Rally because you wanted the extended fuel tank and then you put a rally tower on it, I think the Honda would actually win out to be the best motorcycle. And my fenders are cut on mine because the previous owner cracked them, and I still think it looks pretty darn good. Even with the cut fenders, it might actually look better. It's got a solid skid plate installed because the fenders are removed, so I don't know. It's a hard one. You guys let me know. Which bike do you think looks better? I just think the Honda front end is a little off. I don't like the small and large headlight. They should have at least made the headlight holes the same size. And that way, you know, they'd probably look better. Speaking of lighting, let's touch on that for a second. Both of these motorcycles have amazing lighting. I would have to say the Tenere has like the best lighting I've ever had on a motorcycle, bar none, with this amazing multiple LEDs. And I understand they're rather expensive too if you are to break them. And I was riding the Honda briefly at night when we were on our last trip because it got dark around 6 p.m. and my lights just lit up everything. But then my buddy who was riding the Tenere behind me, when he flicked his on, it was almost like I turned my high beam on. So they both have really good lighting. The Tenere is probably just the best ever stock, at least that I've ever owned. And when it comes to the modifications, I feel there is some mods that you probably do right off the bat for both motorcycles. One of which is crash bars. Crash bars are almost a must for either of these, especially if you're running the rally and you don't have your fenders cut like mine. And just the Tenere, it's beautiful, so you definitely don't want to be dropping it and scratching it all up. So crash bars are definitely a must. As far as performance, I really don't think you need to do anything to the Tenere. I took someone's advice online and I put on a cheap can, like exhaust muffler on the end, and just opened up the sound a little bit more. I didn't want to really lean it out too much by doing a full system since I don't have any kind of computer mod, but where I live, the air is really rich. I'm at sea level anyway. Plus the computer will compensate for it a little bit. It runs fine, but it sounds great. Now when it comes to the rally, I feel like there's kind of like a must trifecta of mods there. I think you should get an ECU mod from 550 Performance Stage 1, Black Widow exhaust slip-on at the least, and a DNA or Tusk air filter. And that really opens that motorcycle up, whether you want to do high highway speeds or whether you want to grunt through the woods and gear it down a little bit. That really helps. I don't particularly like the stock tires on either vehicle, but I will say if you're doing all road, the stock Scorpions on the Tenere are very good for just road and wet conditions and horrible off-road. Whereas I feel like the IRCs that come stock on the Honda are just basically kind of mediocre to bad at everything. So it all depends what you're going to use the motorcycle for. Back to protection, one thing I would definitely do is I would put a guard on the front of the Tenere headlight. A lot of people do this because they don't want to break it. Me personally, I don't like the way it looked, so what I used is a vinyl wrap, a clear wrap, and I put the vinyl wrap and peeled it away. And if it ever gets too beat up, I'll just rip it off and put another one on. And this gives you a lot more structural integrity and avoids scratches, of course. It's a real thick vinyl. Not saying I could crash it into a tree and it not crack. It might, right? But it keeps my headlight clear, gives me that good aesthetic I want, and just gives me extra protection and costs hardly nothing. So it's all around a win, and that's why I did that. I don't really feel a need to adjust the gearing or the chain on the Tenere. I feel like the Tenere is pretty much good everywhere, whereas the Honda, I feel like since it's a smaller displacement engine, you would maybe gear it for what your purpose is. Now, if you find yourself on only back roads and a lot of single track or a lot of dirt roads, I feel like it's definitely good to add a couple teeth to the Honda and put it in perspective. A lot of times when you change the tire, they're going to be 12 millimeter taller, which is going to simulate a loss of a couple teeth on the rear. I think it's around 3 teeth of what I calculated. So that being said, if you're doing a lot of highway, you could just put one of those bigger tires on anyway and you're already getting lower RPMs at higher speeds. Or if you're like me and you want to take out a lot of off-road and not so much highway/road, then you gear a few more teeth on the rear and it gives you a little more low-end grunt. More rear wheel torque, about 2% per tooth, and it shortens your gears. So with the Honda, what I like to do, and this is my second one of course, I immediately changed the chain to an X-ring, less resistance, aluminum sprocket, add a couple teeth, and the tires. And that alone just completely makes the motorcycle more of a useful tool/weapon off-road. So basically what I'm trying to say is the Honda, you might want to tweak it a little bit for your purpose, whereas the Tenere has so much power that it's pretty much insignificant to do any of these subtle changes because they're not going to matter because it's just kind of good anywhere in its rev range, whether it be road and off-road. Granted, you have the ability to utilize that power. Okay, so some final thoughts. Throughout this whole comparison, I dumped a bunch of information on you, a bunch of opinions on you, to try to help you make a more informed decision on which one of these motorcycles would be best for you. I feel like it depends on a lot of things, and one big thing I didn't bring up is the MSRP. The Tenere being $10,000 is a pretty steep amount of money if you're looking for a motorcycle as a commuter to try to save money. If you're looking to do something like that, and you consider the things I talked about in the road section, the Honda 300 Rally might be the option for you. Now, there's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, I want that power. And if you're on the road, the Tenere's power is something that's amazing and feels good. The MT-07 CCP engine is great. Also, another thing that should be covered is reliability. So with both of these motorcycles, you have top-notch reliability. You have the Honda, which is a modified 250L engine. They stroked that engine, and that engine has been known to last 100,000 miles in some cases that I've seen. Also, of course, you see people taking it for 30,000 mile trips like Itchy Boots. To put 30,000 miles on a motorcycle, it would take you a very long time. Next, the Yamaha engine, the MT-07 engine, CP2, is known to be one of the most reliable engines in motorcycling today. So you got two big names, Honda and Yamaha. They're both backed by huge R&D and reliability standards, so you can't go wrong in that department. So both of them really equal each other out. Then when it comes to off-road, once again, it really depends on what you're going to do and where you're going to explore and how you're going to use this motorcycle. And of course, your skill level. I feel like the Tenere is pretty great, but to be honest, when it comes to off-road, I'd rather have the Rally. Unless, of course, we're doing fire cuts and big open roads that are just gravel. If that's all you're going to ride, then the Tenere is probably good. Also, we should bring up availability. Both of these motorcycles are pretty hard to find, and most people, when they sell them used, they want to sell them more than MSRP. In fact, I've heard of dealers doing that. I bought 3 new motorcycles in the past couple years, and all 3 of them was at MSRP. That's just crazy, especially when they tackle on freight and assembly and all that other stuff. Now, I did briefly cover insurance. I don't know how it works in most people's areas or most people's states, wherever country, wherever you're from. But here where I'm from, if you're under a certain CC and engine, there's huge benefits to your vehicle insurance. Now, I say that as if it means something because I actually pay $100 a year. Well, it's $99 to be honest, for 3 motorcycles to be covered for the whole year. So motorcycle insurance is really cheap for me. And that's in a state, New Jersey, in which people think everything's super expensive. For motorcycling, New Jersey is amazing. We have no motorcycle inspection whatsoever. Insurance is super low for motorcycles. There's plenty of areas to ride as long as you have a legal motorcycle, like the Pine Barrens, and there's a lot. So I'm pretty fortunate with that. As I said in the mods section, there's plenty of mods that you might want to do, but none of these are really necessary, especially for the Tenere. For the Honda, I think more so if you're going to take it more off-road, which I've always treated my 300 platforms as a street legal dirt bike, which honestly I know it's not. We all know it's not. Another great thing to touch on is service intervals. The Honda has very long service intervals. I mean, longer than I think anybody would actually do. 8,000 miles between oil changes is insane. I don't put that many miles on my bikes a year, so I just change them every year because it's 8,000 miles or a year, whatever sooner. Then valves are like 15,000 miles. For the Tenere, they're not quite as long, but they're still good. It's not something that's a big deal. Just change your oil often every year. Clean your air filter. That's the most important thing. Clean that thing all the time. If you keep your air filter clean, you won't have too many problems with the engine to valve or loss of compression over time. So yeah, keep your air filter clean. And when it comes to the 300L versus the Rally, I was thinking about doing a video for that, but I will say that having both of those motorcycles, I really like the Rally better because there's not much difference that I feel off-road. And of course, yeah, you have more items that could crack off, but the extended fuel tank is totally worth it. The headlights are better. It just seems like that's the bike to buy, in my opinion, because you're already dealing with over 300 pounds. And like I said, the motorcycle feels light. The extra 20 pounds doesn't really change too much. And I transported my lithium-ion battery, which saves a couple pounds. Exhaust saves a couple pounds. You save like 2 pounds on your sprocket. You know, it adds up a little bit. And I think it's very interesting when we talk about weight. A lot of people don't ever ride the bike or sit on the bike, and they think that the weight on the paper makes such a big difference. And then they also take the weight of their motorcycle, let's say it's like a WR, for example, and then they say, well, my WR only weighs this much because I minus this, that, and this other thing, right? And then you look and they added all kinds of extra crap to it. So it's like you don't really know the true weight of your motorcycle, but they boast these numbers as if it matters. No, the feel of the motorcycle matters so much more than a number on the paper, and I will tell you that firsthand from driving all these motorcycles back to back. The other big one is the DRZ. A lot of people say the DRZ is superior, and I disagree. I like the DRZ. I think it's a good platform. In fact, the one that's in my pole bar now, the E model, the off-road model, is excellent. So much better than the S. But the DRZ owners that I know prefer the Honda over their own DRZ. Not prefer it, but they say that it's better. And somebody in the comments just mentioned that the other day. I know this is a little bit of a rant, but they're like, well, the DRZ is better, the Honda's this and that. And it's like, look, man, I like the 6-speed transmission. I like the fuel injection. I like having a gear indicator, a fuel indicator. I like the lighting on the Honda better, the balance, and if we're talking the Rally, the fuel capacity and the wind protection. It's just a matter of opinion, but in my opinion, the Honda's pretty good. And we're speaking of the Tenere, and we're talking about heavier bikes. I haven't had many heavier bikes. The closest thing to the Tenere that I ever had was which is now the KTM 690, which was the KTM LC4 640, and that was an excellent motorcycle. I can't say anything wrong with that motorcycle. I don't really ride big adventure bikes except for the Tenere, which is a mid-class. Yeah, it's pretty great, but it's not something that can compete with a lighter off-road motorcycle in that regard. Adventure bikes are moving more towards a touring aspect and kind of replacing tourers and cruisers, which is fine. They're great for that. The seating position's awesome. You're up high, you can see everything, and they're pretty comfortable. Okay, so the video is coming to a close. If you've been watching this long, then you're truly awesome, and I am very grateful to have you as my audience. Let me know in the comments below so I can give you one of those hearts. If you see people in other videos with hearts, that's because that's my thing. If they watch the whole video, they get the heart, and when you see other people with the heart, you know why. I hope you guys found this video informative, and once again, if you want to support the channel, pick up one of those t-shirts or join the Patreon. I would love to have you, and I'd really be honored to have your support. Stay safe out there, because we're a small group, us motorcycle riders, and particularly off-road motorcycle riders, and I'll catch you on the next one. My name is Andrew, and this is Motorcycles Off-Road. Thank you guys.